Hello and welcome to the Inside Stylist podcast, where we talk all about interiors, from interviews with interior stylists, writers and the up-and-coming interiors brands we all want to hear about and feature. There's so much to talk about. I'm your host, Emma Morton-Turner. Enjoy the show. When it comes to designing a room, the light is one of the most important factors to take into consideration, and that means choosing the right lighting. Today's guest knows all about that, having been an award-winning designer for 4 years, creating bespoke lights for her own brand, designers and big-name brands. Her exclusive designer prism lighting is in store in Debenhams right now. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest from her studio in South East London, designer Sarah Colson.
Hello.
Hello. Do you know what I've just realised? Normally I check that I'm pronouncing people's names right. Did I get your name right?
It's Sarah Colson.
Colson.
Yeah,
Sarah Colson.
that's all right.
I was close. So thank you very much for inviting me round. I don't actually live too far, so it's quite nice to come somewhere local.
South East London.
Yes. And we're going to talk. You do so much. We were just talking about you're a designer and you turn your hand to lots of things. But I've been introduced to you through your lighting for Debenhams, which is very much glass based. But how did you come to do design? Did you study design?
I did. So I did a BA in Bristol in a subject called interdisciplinary textile design.
What's that?
Yeah, exactly. Which was basically, it sort of allowed me to study lots of different things under one umbrella, which was amazing. So we did ceramics, we did enamelling, we did screen printing, we did knit and weave and garment construction. Screen printing, I think I've already said that. Woodworking, like metalworking, loads and loads of different things. And then it was the course itself was very conceptually based. So we'd come up with all these kind of marvellous concepts and then apply various different materials or investigations to them. So my final graduation piece was all these tiny sculptures that must have been about 2 centimetres wide, made out of things that you just found around the house.
Oh, wow.
But it was just, it was just really fun and very free in terms of your material selections and things that you could kind of make. And then I went on and did a master's at the Royal College of Art, which was like quite different to your BA. You come from your BA where you're quite supported in your ideas to going into your MA where you're very challenged. And I think that's where I felt like a bit of a fraud.
Oh, we all have imposter syndrome. I have it sitting here right now.
But it was, a lot of people had come from like furniture design backgrounds.
So one specific discipline.
Very specific. And I came in with all of these skills, but I wasn't really a master of any of them. So everyone would come up with ideas, but know that they were going to then make a chair or a light or I don't know, something else. I mean, the course was quite broad in lots of senses anyway, but it sort of, I found it quite intimidating because I wasn't really sure who I was and what it was I wanted to do as well. So then after I graduated, I kind of did like a few different bits and pieces and then took a job that was definitely not right for me in any shape or, it was an office job and it kind of made me quite miserable, I think, in lots of ways.
I think sometimes we need to do that just to know that we don't ever need to do it again.
Well, I've made that mistake a few times, I have to admit, but that's a good thing, I think. That is a good thing. It reminds me that that's the thing I don't want to do. And so I left that company on quite a low position in life and just felt really sad and kind of unsure of who my identity was as a person. And so as a sort of a therapeutic thing, I kind of like started doing projects that I'd enjoyed doing on my BA. So I kind of went right back to the sort of the source of where I'd sort of started. And that was kind of where my first light was born, basically. So I had boxes of safety pins, loads and loads of safety pins underneath my bed. And I started threading them onto bits of chain and ended up making this kind of weird like mesh material. And then friends of mine asked me if I'd do an exhibition with them and everyone was either making a light or a vessel and I was like, well, I've never made a light before, so I'll give it a go. And so that's what I did. And a friend of mine, her boyfriend was a glass blower, and so he blew these kind of really beautiful like branch-like shapes for me and these domes, which this kind of mesh material hung over. And the light was a hit. And so that's kind of how I started off. But it was a really kind of random journey of me going I'm not an engineer or, I didn't study kind of engineering design or anything like that. it is literally just me kind of teaching myself along the way of how you do things. So yeah, that's kind of how that's my background, and that's sort of how I sort of started the company as well. So
when the guy was doing the blowing, because this is what I was thinking as I was driving over here, is that when you do art, I assumed you'd done some form of art, you learn lots of different disciplines. And I was thinking, I wonder if you'd learned glass blowing as part of the course, because actually that's a very specific thing to learn. So when you had the idea of the branches and everything, did you literally draw it and say, this is the kind of thing I've got in mind, and then he had to get it as close as possible?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things my MA taught me, was that if you have an idea, you just find the person to help you make it. Yeah. So I'd been to their studio quite a few times. His name's Jochen Holtz. He's amazing, really, really, really talented glass blower. And because he was going out with my friend, it was quite a nice kind of like, we just sort of bumped into each other, and I was like, oh my God, that would totally work for what I'm trying to do at the moment. But the way that he kind of works is, he works with something called borosilicate, which is glass that's made out of tubes. Yeah. So you buy in the tubes from big factories, they extrude them in big factories, and then you burn them on a high pressure Bunsen burner, and you kind of twist them apart, or you can kind of bend them into certain shapes and things like that. So it was quite easy for me to sort of say, well, can we put another kink in there, or like change the end to have it, I don't know, more fluted, or and between us, because he was obviously exceptional in this skill, he could kind of offer different ideas to it as well. But it was quite a dynamic, rapid process in terms of designing that. I think we did it in like a day or something. Wow. Yeah, exactly. I kind of knew what I was looking for, but with his sort of creativity loaded into it, it just like came out as a really lovely piece of design. Like quite difficult to kind of like keep replicating. It wasn't something that could be mass manufactured or anything. No. But
and that's the charm of it, though, isn't it? Who wants what everybody can have
exactly
that easily? And you want things that look unique, even if they're not.
Exactly.
So we were talking earlier about you. You've done quite a lot of work abroad, and I think I was quite surprised by this. It's really interesting. So you've been in Brazil, Indonesia, Cyprus, and Romania, and you've done stuff with local communities. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah. So while I was doing my master's, actually on my BA and my master's, I've always sort of had an interest in community and sort of how community functions, or how they kind of have some sort of identity in some way, and how design can be a tool to empower communities in some way. Yeah. So that kind of work was explored a little bit more with a friend of mine. We did a project in Southeast London on an estate where we kind of photographed local people on the estate, and then I cross-stitch embroidered kind of quotes from the estate before it was pulled down, which was sort of like a bit of like a therapy for the community members, as well as us kind of understanding what was actually going on, giving it narrative in a sense. And then I went to Brazil and worked with an amazing designer called Marcelo Rosenbaum, who works with very remote communities, looking at their craft skills and finding ways that he can contemporise those craft skills and then sell them on an open market. So it was a very incredible kind of like enlightening project that I did with him, and then I got the opportunity to do something similar in Cyprus and then also in Romania, where we looked at these old historic crafts and how we could then either learn them or contemporise them for the younger generations, in order to kind of help people, how can I say this well, sort of in order to help people kind of prosper from them. Yeah. Because historically they don't have a need for them anymore. You wouldn't weave a rug yourself. You would go and buy it from IKEA. Yeah. But you might have something that you might want to weave as an alternative, or you might want to take the patterns that were made from the weaving and change them into wallpaper patterns, for example. So there's ways of kind of lifting that cultural identity and then helping them to kind of benefit from it in some way. So the very last one that I did was in Brazil, up in the Amazon rainforest.
Wow.
And it was crazy. So we got flown into the middle of nowhere in the Amazon rainforest basically, and we worked in these kind of like very sweaty, horrible conditions with like crocodiles swimming through the water everywhere and mosquitoes biting you left, right and centre kind of thing. We slept on the deck of a boat in a hammock. Yeah, it was amazing. It was incredible.
Absolutely incredible.
So the communities that lived there would go into the forest, cut down these particular types of tree, and then we'd help them carve them into various different shapes of objects that they could then sell. Because currently what they do is they make them into tourist things, like, I don't know, crocodiles or, things that
quite
you can...
cheesy.
Very cheesy.
Yeah.
And so we helped contemporise those products. And now they sell to a much more premium market in Brazil, and they get a much better return on those products. And they don't have to make as many. So we're reducing the amount of wood that's being cut down, making the products more sustainable in some way as well, and giving them a better audience to sell to.
Wow, that must feel so rewarding.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really nice. So it's that. Plus, I get to really learn something. You know, I get to travel to Brazil. I get to learn a new skill, and I get to design something that I know's got heart and soul to it. So that sort of side of my practice is something that I really enjoy exploring.
So do you continue to do that? Has that been from the beginning, and you try and go out and do something like that as often as you can?
As often as I mean, they're becoming less frequent at the moment just because life changes, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
You know, we're trying to buy a house and, I've got more commitments in terms of my workloads and stuff like that. But I'm sort of looking for things. If they come up, then I'll definitely do them. But at some point in the future, it would be nice to set something up that is myself managing it a little bit more. A friend of mine does it where she uses wood turners in Finland, and I don't think he would have particularly any work. Now he has hundreds of pounds every month to kind of like make wood turning pieces. Yeah. So, but at this stage in my life, it's not quite where I'm at. So, but at some point it may be. Yes. Who knows?
Have to go back to the Amazon and
hammock
again. So, if we go back to your lighting, you have on your website, which is sarahcolson.com, and that's Sarah with an H, Colson. I like to make sure everyone knows. It will be in the show notes. So you've got your own lighting on your website, and then you've done other designs, as we said, for Debenhams and collaborations that we're going to talk about in a minute. But do you want to describe what your lighting's like, or your products are like? Because you don't just do lighting, do you? So for anyone who hasn't seen them, what would you describe for them? So
they are glass lights, predominantly glass lights, made out of the borosilicate I was speaking about before. They're quite timeless, I feel. They don't really sort of sit in any particular time, or they're not really defined by an era. No. You could say that they're slightly maybe 1920s because they're glass, and because of the fluting in the glass. But they've got quite a bit of colour in them, not in your face colour, but quite subtle. Yeah. They're quite elegant, very feminine, I think. Quite an expression of myself, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, as it should be.
As it should be, yeah. They're mainly pendant lights, which I prefer to design. That's just kind of naturally where I end up going a lot of the time with lighting collections. There's a couple of desk lights in there. There's a few pieces with stone in it, where I worked with a stonemason down in Dorset to carve me some stone bases and stuff like that. So that was nice. And then there's the collections that I've done for other companies where they're made slightly differently, but I think they still have the Sarah Colson kind of touch to them. I can see
exactly. I've seen them, so I think you have a very distinctive look, and they're beautiful on their own. But then when you put them in a cluster, they're like. We were just saying earlier, I don't know, we won't say who it's for, but there's a big kind of, that's a cluster light for your... that you're just having installed at the moment. I can just imagine over a staircase or an entrance to a large house. That absolutely amazing.
So it's sort of like a big chandelier kind of
chandelier
thing.
With your lights.
Yeah.
I'll put some links through on the show notes so you can see exactly the kind of thing we're talking about. But they're beautiful, and I love the colours coming through. I think they're really, like, you've got like the bit where the light bulb is a colour, and then there's a whole kind of shade on top almost, and they're very delicate looking.
Yeah. Well, the way I like to sort of imagine them is if a light is completely functionless when you don't have the light on. So you want something that's really pretty in the middle of your room, because it's such a big space with that thing in the middle of it. So that's why I've kind of made them the way they are, so that they look sculptural as well as kind of functional.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just going to mention that, so you've done lighting for the Conran shop and for West Elm, and we were just talking about your new collection for Debenhams, which is the prism lights. Do you want to describe them? Because I think they're very different from the collection you have on your website, the Debenhams ones.
Yeah, so they were very different, but they were very exciting as a project because, you know, as a small design, as a designer that works very small in terms of production, it's not that often you'd be able to get a mould made or work with factories where they have more sophisticated kind of skill sets, or just things that, because at the moment I produce and everything's produced maybe in 1s or 2s or 5s kind of thing. So do you
kind of make to order? Yeah.
Whereas the ones for Debenhams would be made in batches of maybe 200 at a time. So it meant that I was given a whole new kind of scope of manufacturing techniques to use. And I'd had an idea while I was away. I lived in France for a couple of years. One of the places I lived was in Chamonix in the Alps. And there was this amazing crystal cave that you could go and visit when you went and had a look at the Mer de Glace, with the these big kind of quartz kind of crystals hanging in them. And, you know, they've always sort of hung in my mind as like a really special place, but also really beautiful things. Because the light hits them in different ways and creates this kind of prism effect. I thought, well, I can give that a go and let's see if this works for Debenhams. So that was how I ended up designing these pieces for them. So they look like crystals hanging in the centre of a room, and they're 3 different shapes, one of which, the smallest one, you can kind of either have it as a pendant or you can have it on its side as a desk lamp as well. And then the other 2 are just 2 slightly different shapes, but you could hang them in a cluster.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when the first time I saw them was at the press launch, and there was a big stand and they were all hanging, and we were like, and as you're describing them, it's like I can just imagine little pieces of quartz is exactly what they look like, but they're beautiful, really beautiful. Yeah, so it's very exciting.
Yeah, it was very exciting. Yeah.
And the idea of having one-offs made ordinarily and then making so many, that's fabulous.
I know. I mean, it's quite exciting because normally I know where all of my lights have gone and the customers that have bought them and things like that. Because even if I sell wholesale, I'll only sell maximum 10 at a time or something. But knowing that all my designs live in someone else's house, it's so lovely.
And your name will be up on the stand. It's brilliant. So as well as working with the brands, you've also done some collaborations. I was looking on your website at you've got... you did one with the 2LG. It's the pink bathroom. Everybody talks about the pink bathroom. So it's really interesting to be looking at you and then going, oh, it's Russell and Jordan's bathroom.
Yeah.
So you did the light, and that was a collaboration. How did that come about? Did they come to you?
So they had a really strong vision of what they wanted. Obviously they do, because that's what they do. They kind of paint a space with their ideas, don't they? Yeah. So they'd seen... So William Martin is a ceramicist, and he makes these amazing kind of chains out of porcelain. And they loved his chains, and they loved the borosilicate glass that I used. And they kind of had this almost like fag packet sketch of what it was they wanted to do. And the 4 of us sat down together and kind of devised what it was that we were trying to do. We actually had 3 lights that were part of the collection, but 2 of them didn't quite make the cut for various different reasons. But it was a really lovely process. It was really nice because it's very rare that you actually design something that's very specific with a really tight brief, but something that you've never designed before as well. So I'd never designed something for a bathroom, so we had to go through the whole IP rating and everything. So that was quite a complicated thing to go through. We ended up having to get like some metal parts machined in order to encase this light system inside of it. And then William, who works quite freely in terms of his ceramics, then had to sort of work out almost like a process in order to make these cylinders that he was making. Yeah. It was quite funny. Some of the conversations we'd have together were like, we all got obsessed with what is it, Superman's Cave of Solace? Is that what it's called? Because we were like, this is what the light is. This is Cave of Solace. This is what it looks like. And I came back from the glass blower one day with all these different tubes of clear glass, and we were kind of like banding them around like lightsabers and stuff like that.
Kryptonite.
Like, definitely kryptonite. Definitely. If they'd have gone for a green scheme, then they could have had kryptonite. Exactly.
Yeah, green. I'm sure green's next.
Yeah, exactly.
So, speaking of collaborations, if you could collaborate with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
So I was thinking about this question quite a lot, and I was trying to remember the last exhibition that I went to that really moved me. And me and my boyfriend went away last year for Christmas to the Canary Islands, and we went to Cesar Manrique's foundation. Have you ever?
No.
Oh my God, it is so inspiring. It was amazing. So he sort of similar ethos to this community work that I'm quite into, but he was an artist / architect from the Canary Islands, and he looked at the way in which people were building buildings and kind of using the land to kind of have a cultural identity in some way. And he could see that with new forms of building technology were coming in and just destroying the whole identity of the place. So he started using those architectural ways of building and building these amazing different types of spaces.
Right.
So he used the lava rocks and built like swimming pools inside of these lava rocks and sprayed them with fiberglass. Oh, wow. So they were almost like Bond layer villain kind of like places. Yeah. But then he was really into kind of like kinetic sculptures. So he had these beautiful kind of like wind sculptures all over the place. And what else did he have? He did this amazing cactus garden. The whole island is covered in. This is Lanzarote, by the way. The whole island is covered in different types of cactuses. So he brought all of the different cactuses to one place and built this stunning garden that you could wander around. But he just kind of got the essence of the land and used that in his art. And I just think that it's so stunning. It's so beautiful. I'd love to have worked with him at some point. He's sadly dead, but so it won't happen. But yeah.
Sounds amazing.
Very, very inspired. Yeah, I was very inspired when I came back from that.
I have to go and Google him and put pictures all over the show notes.
But he's done something on each of the islands. Like Lanzarote is where he's from, so you'll get more things of Cesar Manrique there. But on each of the islands, he built like a cultural centre or another kind of like hotel with these amazing swimming pools in them, and they're just lovely spaces to go and visit. There's loads of plants hanging everywhere, hence inspiration.
A little bit like your kitchen. I have to just share, I walked into Sarah's house and she's got like an upturned basket. It's like a hanging basket, just the wireness of it upside down, and then plants hanging from it. But my goodness, I don't know I have to look up the name of this plant. I have this plant. It's like a really...
it's called Chain of Hearts.
Oh, it's called Chain of Hearts.
Yeah.
Chain of Hearts. That is looped down and up and down again. It must be about 10...
I think it's about 10 metres long,
10 metres long. It's so long. It's seriously impressive. So that's the inspiration for your kitchen.
That is... Cesar Manrique lives with me now.
So another thing I saw on your website is that you've been awarded. You've done very well. So you've got, is it a lava award, and you got an Elle Decoration Newcomer Award. Do you want to tell us about those? That's very exciting.
So, the Elle Decoration was the first award, and that was amazing. I got that a year after I'd set up my business. So,
wow.
I know, I was so shocked to get it. So it was the first year that they decided not to focus on bigger designers.
Oh, brilliant.
And to focus on newcomers to the industry. So it was such an honour to get such an accolade at that kind of young
Did someone
stage.
have to put you forward for that?
Yeah, so a friend of mine put me forward, which was really kind of
really
her.
Lovely.
Yeah, and then I don't know how they have no idea what the judging panel was. I haven't actually
judges if it's Elle Deco,
yeah.
I reckon.
But it was funny because I didn't actually know I'd won the award, but the editor called me up and said, is it okay if we come and do a photo shoot in your studio for the runners-up? And I was like, it's a lot of money to spend for a runner-up, but yeah, fine, yeah.
You were like, let me think about it for just a whole minute. Yeah, wow. And the editor calling you as well.
And the editor calling me as well.
That pretty much is the sign.
I know. And so it was lovely. It was really nice. So, and that threw up loads of really lovely projects for me. That's how I ended up working with West Elm and Debenhams, in fact, as well. And then the Lava Award was a collaborative award. So I've collaborated with a textile designer called Amy Betts, and she wove cables for me for my lights, and we entered this project in an awards. We went and did a show together in Austria, and we entered the light into the show, the awards, and we won. We didn't have a word what they were saying, so they were just kind of speaking loads of German, and then all of a sudden they said our names, and we were like, what does that mean?
Does that mean we won?
Yeah, we won. Yeah, we won.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, and that was brilliant. We won quite a bit of money for that too. So,
and you've only been doing your lights, was it 4 years?
4 years.
4 years, that's phenomenal. You're doing ever so well for 4 years. That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, it all sounds very well on paper. It doesn't always feel that good at times. Sometimes it's a bit like,
so you've been in, I don't know if I mentioned, you've been in the Conran shop, you've been in West Elm, you're in Debenhams now. You've been going you've won 2 awards. I think you're doing all right.
You can come round anytime you want.
You do serve a good biscuit. So, as well as lights, you've got vases on your website. So, what is your favourite thing to design?
I mean, lights is a lovely thing to design. Lights are really nice. If they're simple lights, I really enjoy doing them. I found the 2LG collaboration quite complicated because I'm not that techie, so it would have been easier if we'd have had someone that could use all the CAD programs and sort of been able to machine the parts ourselves and stuff like that. But I love designing lights, but I just enjoy making. So if I can make something, then that's sort of the enjoyment for me. So like I design cushions.
Yeah, and you were showing me your fabulous brightly coloured bags.
Yeah, I make bags. Yeah. I just make anything really. Most of the time I make it for myself, and then if people like it, I'll replicate it and then sell it if people like it. But I prefer being able to make things myself. But if you see a material like the glass and you see a potential in something that you can make with it, like that's even better, because then you can sort of have lots of irons in the fire then, can't you? Lots of things cooking all at the same time. Yeah.
So really it's just, I completely understand, because it's the need to be creative and actually make something, or like for me it's style something, or just the process of a photo shoot is very creative. But sewing and painting and glass bearing.
Well, it's like the TED talk that I did. The title of it was Make Me Happy, and it was all about just finding my confidence again and my identity, because I just love making. You know, some people like to go on a run, some people like to, I don't know, read a book. I just will be happy making I could be happily ironing and sewing all day long. Really sad.
The sewing, the ironing, not so much. Was it scary doing the TED talk?
Yeah, it was. It was really
scary. Did
you
have to learn what you were going to say off by heart? Was there any prompter or anything?
No, it was at a school in Dubai randomly.
You've really travelled.
I was installing a light over there, and then the house that I was installing it at, one of the children said, would they mind me doing a talk at their school as part of this TED talk thing that they were organising. So I was like, yeah, okay, right, that sounds like a great idea. And then got there and I was like, what have I done? This is TED talk. But no, because it was a TEDx talk, they let us have our words in front of us, and it was easier for me to be able to do that, because at that time I was still kind of recovering, still making myself happy in that sense, and I just didn't really feel confident without those words in front of me. But
it's quite when I got married, I remember the registrar saying 1 or 2 words at a time and then asking me to repeat. She actually said to my husband first, and I was like, he's not stupid, you can tell him a whole sentence, he'll remember it. And then when it was my turn, I couldn't remember a single word she said, and I just think the thought of getting up like that and having to remember everything is so difficult. So, you'd have it written on your hand, wouldn't you? Like, not scrunch your hands
exactly
up.
Yeah, when I was younger I used to do acting, and occasionally I'd write my lines on my hand. That's really sad though.
Yeah, we've all done that. Not cheating in exams, just lines in shows.
Lines in plays,
So, what are you working on at the moment? Is it top secret?
It's not top secret. So I launched something at the same time as Debenhams. So the collection for Debenhams is out on the shelves and ready to go. And then I launched another collection called Grid, which I don't know if you've seen it on my website. So they're like tubes of glass with different patterns printed onto them. So it's a new technique. And because of the nature of the glass, the printing technique that I found is like, it almost looks like a thick chalk that's kind of been printed onto the glass. Yeah, so it looks really nice. And then the glass has got like a little shelf, an inward shelf on it, and it just catches on the top of this plate that the the light bulb goes through basically. So I launched that in September at Design Junction. But I'm not sure which way I want to go with it, whether I want to offer that to another company and for them to manufacture it for me, or if I want to go down the route of manufacturing it myself and selling it direct to clients. I've had loads and loads of interest in it, but I'm just running out of time of kind of being able to ship products out and do other bits and pieces, just because other things are kind of taking off as well. So that's sort of the thing that I'm driving at the moment, as well as the bags and as well as other bits and pieces that I'm making. So, but
it's always a constant juggling act.
It is a constant juggling act. Yeah. But I quite like that.
Yeah.
I just can't.
Never get bored.
No, exactly. Can't sit still for too long. So
I understand that. Yeah. So I always like to talk about disasters and mistakes. So because I think it's really good for people to hear that things go wrong, but you can still survive afterwards. Sort of thing. Hence, like I was telling you about setting fire to the location house. So what's the best mistake you've ever made?
So I was trying to think of this as well, and in a weird way, taking a job I hated was possibly the best mistake I've ever made.
Yeah.
I've done it a few times because as a designer, you end up sometimes at a point where you're so desperate for money or security in some way that you take that job that provides all of that. But then 6 months down the line, you're like, what have I done? Like, this isn't me. This isn't what I trained to do. This isn't anything to do with what I love. And so it almost gives me the motivation when I do leave that job to kind of get my act together, work harder, call up clients that I haven't worked with for a while. So it's not necessarily a mistake because you need to make a living. You do need to like pay the bills and stuff like that. But choosing the right job, which might be you are the job kind of thing, or finding something that's a little bit more practical in some ways as well. So
when you took on those jobs that you now like are saying that they were the wrong jobs, did you think I can do this because I can do my creative side of stuff in the evenings and stuff? Well, and then it's very difficult to do two full-time jobs. So
the last one I did was 3 days a week, and it was working for an architect, and I could do the job with my eyes closed. It was really like it was a lovely job. I was business development manager, so I could kind of go out, meet clients, email them and stuff like that. But it was such hard work. It was a full-time job in 3 days, and then the 2 days a week that I had off, plus the weekends to do my own thing, I was exhausted and I just didn't have any creativity left, and so I ended up getting quite low, and that's really bad. That's bad for everyone, really. So it wasn't until I left that job and I started kind of redefining myself again was when I was like, oh right, no, that's what it was. It was the job that was making me sad. It wasn't necessarily the fact that I wasn't making things. It was because I couldn't. I just didn't have any motivation to do any of it. So, have you been there as well? Oh,
many times.
Yeah.
I explained in, I think, episode 2 or something, how I got into styling. And I shared how I did engineering and product design at uni.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
And I took the first graduate job I could get because none of the jobs that were coming up were quite right. And I ended up selling classified ads at IPC Media, which is how I got into magazines. So I believe that I was in the right place at the right time. Otherwise, I'd never have become a stylist. But I had a headset on that chained me to a phone where I had to do
I remember
sales,
you saying this.
and it was just like no. And I just remember I'd always climb the stairs. I never did the lift. I was like, nope, just use, get your steps up. And I'd get slower and slower and slower as I got nearer to the office. I just hated it. Hated it. And then never looked back.
No, same. That's really awful. And it was.
But you're right. It was the right mistake.
It was the right mistake to make because, there's certain things like if you're self-employed, it's really difficult to get a mortgage. You can't. It's difficult to save for a pension and all those other bits and pieces. So you need a bit of security every once in a while, and that it was good, it was great, I'm very thankful for the job, but it's not the job for me. I can't do that forever. I just can't do that forever, sadly. But I could do it for that time, so I did.
And now you don't need to.
And now I don't need to, so it's fine.
I'm looking for your lights in this room. I think this is a rented place, so you don't have the facility to fix your lights, but
don't have any in here. They're by our bed in our bedroom. I can show you them later. They're 2 bedside lights. There's like this little glass one that was that was a sample that I did for an indoor fragrance company where the light bulb would warm the glass and then work as a diffuser.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was quite nice, and we occasionally use that from time to time, but not that often. It was a failed product in some ways. So
I think if I did like your sort of work, I would have them everywhere.
Yeah,
I'd be obsessive.
Yeah, but we kind of live in a house of things made by me. Everywhere is made by me.
And your mobile. All right, I get it. Well, thank you so much.
That's all right.
I've had such a lovely chat with you today. I'm coming away very inspired.
Oh, good.
Thank you very much.
It's really nice, and I've really enjoyed listening to your podcast. I recommend it to lots of people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Inside Stylist podcast. You'll find all the details from today's show over on the website insidestylist.com. If you enjoyed the show, I'd love it if you would go over to iTunes and rate and review it. It's the best way to help other people find the show, and I would really appreciate it. Until next time, bye for now.